score, but initially it's going to be helpful to you. But now their mix is off. So let's assume that they have credit cards, right? But they don't have any more installment. So their mix is off. That's 10% of their credit score, right? So it impacts that. It impacts it negatively for that particular person. So now, what else does that impact? Again, I already said that payment history isn't the same. You're not getting that payment history being reported every month to the credit bureau. So you're not getting that for that particular person. It's not reporting that for them. And then also, it's going to impact their age, their credit age, or their length of history as well, because it's still being calculated. But eventually, that's going to hurt them as well. So this one action, which we would deem as positive, you're going to pay off some debt, get out of debt. We're going to deem that as positive, right? 55%, if you add up all three pillars, payment history, the credit age, and the mix, 55% of their credit score has been impacted by making that payment and paying off their installment debt. Unfair? Absolutely. It's absolutely unfair. I totally agree, because if you actually fulfill your obligation to a creditor and you pay those things off, you should get credit for that. It should be positive for you to do so, but it's absolutely unfair, and that's what happens. So this is how the game is set up. This is how it's set up. This is how it's played. So knowing the rules of the game actually help you win. Okay, so let's jump to the second person. What happened with the second person? First person paid off their installment loans, right? Second person comes along and they've paid off all of their credit card debt. So let's say they had a high utilization. I don't know what it was. Let's guess it was, say, 75%. So their utilization was 75%. You've been listening to the 800 Credit Score Man show. You know you don't want that credit utilization to be over 30%. It can be down to zero, great, but you don't want it over 30%, right? So let's say their credit utilization was 75%, well over the 30% where we want it to be. So, but they've got a car and they've got a home as well. So we talked about them paying off their credit card debt, right? We talked about them paying that off. That's that revolving credit. And then they have a car and a home, which is installment. So they have a good mix. They've got both types of credit that you want and that you need, right? They got both of those things. So what happened to their credit score? So they paid off their credit card debt. What happened to their credit score? Their credit score, it went up. It went way up. Now, why did this happen for them? These two people could even have been dealing with the same amount of money. And this person that paid off that credit card debt, their credit score went up, way up, like I said. So why? First off, their utilization went down to zero. So if you were at 75%, which would be really high, if you're at 90% or whatever, and you go to zero, it's absolutely going to help your credit, because your credit utilization took a nosedive, right? So that's very good. That's very, very good for them. Two, those accounts are still open. Yes, those accounts are still open, and they are getting all of the benefits of all of those payments over the, 10, 15, 5, how many ever years it was they had those credit cards open. They're still getting the benefits of those payments from over the years, because those accounts are actually still open. The third thing that's good for them, their credit age remains the same. So in our first example, the person's credit age begins to be lowered because they closed accounts, right? In this example, their credit age remains the same because they keep those accounts open. So do not close those credit cards when you pay them off. So it remains the same. Number 4, they still have a mix of accounts. So that one action, so let me explain that they still have mix of accounts. So they still have their car note, their mortgage, right? And they still have their credit cards. They don't owe anybody on those credit cards, but they actually still have them. So their mix is still intact. So they got a good mix. So this one action, by paying off their credit cards, impacts 90% of their credit scores. 90% of their credit scores. So if you had the option if you had the option, think about this. So all those things are positive, right? So that's a win-win for this particular person. They paid off their credit. They paid off their credit cards versus paying off anything else. So if you had the option, to pay off credit card debt, or you can go ahead and you can pay off your car and whatnot. Even though you may be tired of paying on your car, you may be thinking, that $500 a month, that $300 a month that I pay on my car, or whatever it is, $800-900 a month I pay on my car. That money is like, that's money I can actually have in my pocket versus paying off these credit cards. It's potential. You got to look and see. It's potentially you're paying the same amount. Maybe you're paying less, but in the long run, when you're dealing with a credit card that may take 10, 12, 13, 14 years to pay off if you're just paying a minimum, or just pay a little extra here and there, versus paying off that vehicle that you still have 3 years left, 4 years left on that particular loan. It may be better financially in the long run to actually pay off that credit card debt versus paying off the car loan. So in this person's situation, what did they do? You see the ripple effect of just the one action by the person, and it's absolutely stellar. So person number two, they paid up. The person number two paid off those credit cards. Now, person number two also has plans on paying off that car and paying off that mortgage as well. What's going to happen to their credit score then once they do that? It's going to fall. Yes, that credit score is going to fall. So maybe they actually come out ahead. In the end of the day, they probably do come out ahead because they took the action of paying off those credit cards first and keeping the accounts alive and all of the other things we talked about that gave them 90% of what helps them with their credit score. So they were able to do all those things by just doing it in the right order. So this is the best order for that person to do it in. So they kept those credit cards. Then they want to pay off their car and they want to pay off their mortgage as well. When they do that, their credit score will fall. But at the end of the day, they're probably going to come out ahead because their score went significantly up. It went up significantly when they paid off the credit cards. By the time they get to paying off the car and the mortgage, which isn't going to be right away. Most of us don't have that kind of cash laying around, right? We're not making big deals that way where we can, decide, hey, do I pay off my entire mortgage? Do I pay off my car, my $30,000 car, my $15,000 car, or do I do something else with it? But by the time they get to that particular situation when they're able to pay that off, their credit score will continue to climb. It'll continue to climb. And so when they start paying off those other installment loans and whatnot, then it won't impact them as much as it does when, if they were to do it the other way around, the way person number one did. So if you've got that option, it's clear that you should handle your credit card debt. Not only from a credit score standpoint, but even from financial standpoint, handling that credit card debt, which is compound interest, which takes you longer, does not have a term on it like your vehicle or a personal loan. Term meaning there's an end date. If you do what you're supposed to, pay $100 a month for the next 5 years, your loan is done. You've paid everything that you owe us, right? If you do that versus a credit card where you're going to pay this minimum and you're going to pay it and pay it and pay it and pay it, and it's going to take you 13, 14, 15 years to pay the whole thing off, right? So you have those options when it comes to it. And if you do it correctly, if you do it the right way, then you're going to get it done right. You're going to get it done right. You get your score up just right. So let me do this. Let's do a question of the day because we haven't done one in a while. So we'll do this question of the day, and I have one more thing. We're going to talk about collections when it comes to collections and how you're supposed to handle that too. What's the ripple effect of that? So question of the day, we're going to go to Judy. Judy is out of the great state of Illinois, and she emailed me, 800@creditscoreman.com, of which you can do as well. Email me. So thank you, Judy. Thank you so much for emailing me. So here's what she said. I've heard you say that you can look for a car or a mortgage and have your credit run a bunch of times within 2 weeks, and it's only as if you had one inquiry in terms of points being deducted from your credit score. Recently, I heard you actually have up to maybe 45 days to do this. So what's true? So let me break this down for you. So Judy asked, and she was saying, she listens to the show, and I've said, hey, you got 14 days to go and look as many times as you want to, have your credit pulled as many times as you want to, if you're looking for a mortgage or if you're looking for a vehicle. I've said 14 days. And it'll only count against you when it comes to that inquiry and the points being deducted as one inquiry, even though all of them will show up on your credit report, right? So that's what I've said in the past, right? And I'm going to hold true to it today, and I'm going to tell you why. So Judy says that recently she heard that you might have up to 45 days to be able to do this. So Judy, I'm going to tell you this one. It's a great find. It's a very good find. So what's true? I don't know about the 45 days. 45-day thing may have come along again. They've been making some minor changes due to COVID-19. Everybody can't get out, rush out and do all the stuff you would normally be able to do, which is one of the reasons they extended the collections portion for the collection agencies from 30 days or 35 days to get back to you, investigate, get back to you, and tell you about your collection disputes. They extended it to 45 days. So possibly they've done that. I don't know anything about it. So, but here's the thing. You definitely have 30 days. So I always tell you guys 14 days. You definitely have 30 days. I don't know about the 45, but you definitely have 30 days to do that. Here's the caveat. So, you know how we talked about the different versions of FICO? You got 5, you got FICO 6, 7, and up, and, up to 10 now, right? Well, the older versions only give you up to 14 days. And that's just how the algorithm works. That's how it's set up. And so since they have that version and it only gives you up to 14 days, and the newer versions give you up to 30 days, that's the reason that I tell people 14 days. So the reason I tell people 14 days is because, one, I think that's plenty of time. So you should have plenty of time to search, if you're trying to buy a car or whatever. And, if you're looking for a car, probably, in the same block, 3-block radius is 5-6 different car dealerships. You can hit them all if you want to. Same day, probably, right? So your 14 days is plenty of time. But maybe that's just me. You might need more time than I do. So 14 days is plenty of time to do that. And you can have your credit run at each one of those places. No biggie, right? But 2, you never know which version, and this is more important, you never know which version that the people that are pulling your credit score, their credit report, which version they're on. So you don't know if these people are on, FICO 4 or FICO 5 or FICO 9 or FICO, you don't know. So it's better to be safe than sorry in my estimate. A couple weeks ago, I told you guys about somebody that, asked somebody at the bank, asked their banker, what version of FICO are you on? And that person did not know. So even if you were to ask, somebody at the car dealership or whatever, what version are they on, they may not have the information. They might not be accurate. So better safe than sorry. I say 14 days. You got 14 days. And then thirdly, how many of us remember what we had for breakfast yesterday? So you mean to tell me 27 days in, after you went and looked for a car, or you've been putting in your information online and calling mortgage companies or whatever, you're going to remember the date that you started doing that and know that was 27 days ago. That was 28 days ago. And I know I only got a couple more days to keep doing this. Typically, no. But typically, 14 days, 2 weeks, boom, I started doing this on a Saturday. I remember because this was what was going on that Saturday, and the first place we went to was XYZ Chevy. Those kinds of things you might remember. So that's why I say 14 days versus the 30 days. Because 2, you don't want to get the double hit. So if you wind up getting a double hit, then you're going to be mad. A lot of people are already mad that they go in because they don't know this information, and they go in and then they see that they pull their credit 6, 7, 8 times, and they're mad because of that. And it doesn't impact them any of the lease. All this happened in the same day. So